There it goes.
There we are.
It, for whatever reason, it added the extra line into the studio that this was not here before. And so it added an extra one.
Well, it's okay, because we have it figured out, right?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Well, good evening, everyone. Hello.
Here's the intro.
Yes. Hello and welcome to Divine Disbelief. We are your home for secular news and opinion and a brand new format. I'm Susan.
I am Nathaniel.
How's everybody doing this evening? We've got everybody streaming everywhere. I think it's going to look great. We got some, better late than never, right? We got this. We got this.
15 minutes is honestly good for us.
It really is. And now that we have everything figured out, everything looks good. Everything's super pretty right now. I kind of like it.
Yep. We're using multiple screens here. Mm-hmm. We have studio mode set up on here. We have an all-new format set up for you folks tonight. So if you saw us in the past where we kind of stuck to the same type of thing, we have adjusted that, and we think that you're really going to like it. Mm-hmm. So, and it's been a long time coming, I think.
Yeah, I think it's been about, since September, October.
September.
So
October, November, December, January. Hey,
4.5 months.
Yeah.
4.5 months. Yeah. But it's great to see everybody, and we're really, really glad that y'all are here for us. We really appreciate it. We'll figure that out one day.
I appreciate that this says this chat is ready to display messages.
It does.
And then I can see hey Nate, but it is the blurriest thing ever on here.
Yeah.
So I hope you can see the chat somewhere else, because I can't.
I can see it on Twitch.
That way, if anybody chats.
Us on Twitch.
And so if you are looking at us on YouTube, hi there, YouTube.
Hi.
If you are on, and I see a hand wave from somebody, you can look at it somewhere else, right? Can't you see all the chats elsewhere?
We'll figure it out.
Yep. And if you're looking at us on Periscope, welcome in from Periscope. I've been saying that we were going to do this on Periscope for a while now. Mm-hmm. And this is not our final form either. We're like the poke people of
people.
Yeah. I don't know, Pokemon.
Yeah.
Poke ladies of live streaming. We have another studio change we're going to be making. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to be sitting like right next to each other. Maybe next week. Who knows?
Yeah. And
it has been a few months. Yes, it has. I'm glad that I can read that, even though I do not know who it's from.
From SS.
Okay.
1964.
1964. Good to see you again as well. I had seen you over there on, whose channel were we on the other day? I think it was
Neil's.
Neil's channel. We were on Neil, the 604 Atheist. Nice little shout out to him there. Mm-hmm. But we have our new format tonight is going to go something like this, and this is very malleable, by the way. Mm-hmm. We're going to be going in and we're going to be doing the secular news and opinion. Mm-hmm. So that's not changing. Mm-mm. We still want to keep everybody updated with the stuff that's really overlooked, and that is news that affects the secular world, community. I don't know.
Community works.
Sure.
I like it.
And we also have a deep dive section where we pick one topic every single week, and then one of us does a really deep dive into it. And if you were watching my Periscope last night, I gave a couple of clues, or if you're Apologia, we were talking about it yesterday. And I'm going to be the one doing that this evening. We also have I don't know what we're calling that section, but it's going to be, hi, here's what book we're reading.
I'm trying to think of what we could. I mean, there's always like recommendations. We'll think of something snazzy for it.
Should be Oprah's book club. Like, that way we're not.
The Disbelief book club?
Oprah's book club, allegedly. Because
allegedly.
Say that.
You can add allegedly to anything, and you can say it. It's fine.
Yep. And then we have a rant time where one of us is going to rant.
I do like ranting.
Yeah. And I've got, Hamilton talks about that. And I've got, of course, one tonight. I think you do as well. Or I don't know if you actually, do you?
I don't have a rant.
I do.
I can play off of your rant.
I have got one. So I like this. Nice good. Says, I think that's lace. I don't know. Again, I'm going to have to fix this because it is tiny and I cannot read it. I don't know what it looks like on YouTube either. And there's no way for us to see the comments anywhere.
Also small. I think if you go... No, that's really the only way.
Restream.
Maybe. We'll see. Let's look on Restream. Not on Restream.
I can look at the
Maybe
chat
that.
on Restream. Open in browser.
Yes.
This is something we should have done earlier.
You would think, but you know.
Hooray! The chat is waiting for new messages. Is that... Oh.
There we go.
Tanya says, this
Yay!
is school. So professional.
Yeah.
Ah, you think so now. I'm doing the producing here, so it's going to fall apart at some point.
Hey, we've got this.
So I think that if I do something like this... Yes! There it is.
Ooh, I love it.
Now
It's
we have
perfect.
1, 2, 3, 4 screens.
Yes, we do.
It's so cool.
We are
So,
very prepared.
Yes.
I like it.
And so with that, thank you, a social _ life.
Yeah, thank you.
Pretty awesome. You got 3 underscores. And there, I think, that's the new one, right? Because Lace sent that more than once. I don't know. I'm figuring it out as I go along too.
Yeah.
So with that, let's get to the news.
Yeah, let's talk about some stuff that is in the news right now. So, what is there to say about Rick Wiles that hasn't already been said?
Oh God, I have a lot.
I'd imagine so, but still. So he is a conspiracy theorist, of
Yeah.
course. He is a true news broadcaster that rails on about how we're living in the end times. So
Are we not?
I mean, it's sort of like Rorschach and Watchmen. You don't get the reference, but Rorschach and Watchmen walks around with the end is an eye like sign and sandwich board. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that you tell everybody that I don't know anything about.
It's just Watchmen. It's not that big a deal.
Watchmen,
I
so.
mean, it's fine. And of course, he is an incredible, for lack of a better word, anti-Semite. But the worst of it all is that the dude gets press credentials. That thing that was denied to Jim Acosta from CNN. Yeah, Rick Wiles gets those. He's supposedly covering international events. This particular international event was in Davos, Switzerland, and it specifically was the World Economic Forum, where, as Right Wing Watch says, President Donald Trump delivered a speech and hobnobbed with world leaders. And I just want to point out...
That's what you do when you're president.
I mean, apparently so, but hobnobbed is a really great word.
Oh, it really is.
And it's very fitting for this because I have an extension in Chrome that when you double click a word and highlight it, it tells you what the word means.
Okay.
Which is very handy.
Did it give you a definition?
It did. Means to mix socially, especially with those of higher social status.
So is that kind of like whenever I'm making an alcoholic drink and I mix it with things that type of things that I can't afford?
The really fancy stuff?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's similar.
It's that's like the toppest of the shelves.
The toppest of the shelves.
Yeah.
That's super fancy stuff.
Uncertain if that's a word.
It is now.
Yeah.
It totally is now. I like it.
I could do that. I'm a fan of mixers.
So, in case you don't remember, Rick Wiles is responsible for my absolute favorite instance of Heath Enright's I Can't Breathe laugh.
Oh, yeah.
Which is absolutely wonderful. When he had said that the efforts to impeach Trump were a Jew coup.
At least rhymes.
Yeah, I mean, bright side, he's got that going for him.
Yeah,
so
good for him.
Yeah, that's always good. He said, that's the way the Jews work. They are deceivers, they plot, they lie, they do whatever they have to do to accomplish their political agenda. This is my favorite part. You have been taken over by a Jewish cabal. The Church of Jesus Christ, you're next. Get it through your head. They're coming for you. There will be a purge. That's the next thing that happens when the Jews take over a country. They kill millions of Christians.
Wait, what? When was
He
this?
said that.
When was this?
So that was November.
Okay.
In November, when he was talking about the efforts to impeach Trump, when he said, it's a Jew coup, it's all conspiracy. Of course.
I'm glad that it wasn't, this week on the 75th anniversary of Auschwitz being liberated, because
that would be bad.
That would, don't put it past these folks. I'm certain that somebody said something about it.
That's true.
No.
You'd imagine so. We are the world that allows teenagers to take selfies in Auschwitz, so there's that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it's better they take selfies there than they try to commit genocide.
That's true. It is the
Welcome in, Maya. It is great to see you.
Yeah, hi. How are y'all? Hello to everybody on all of the different places we are broadcasting. This is our first time on Restream, so we set up Twitch, which is awesome. I think it's actually technically streaming to my Facebook as well, so we'll see if it is. If you're on Facebook, hi.
90% of the comments are from Periscope.
That's awesome.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And apparently there's 6 people watching, which honestly is more than I thought there would be across all the platforms.
I like it.
So, because we didn't tell like anybody.
No, we really
Made
didn't.
cryptic comments on Twitter, and that was it.
We'll get back into it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We'll figure out our groove.
Yep.
I like it. So what's even better about this whole entire thing is that this is not even the first time that Wiles and True News have covered the World Economic Forum. And of course, Wiles and his cronies, who are named Edward Zoll, I think it's how you say that, and Doc Burkhart, they made sure to thank the president profusely for inviting them to the forum. Wiles said, "We are honored to be here representing the kingdom of heaven and our King Jesus Christ. Almighty God's favor is on True News." I just can't. What I'm really wondering about this whole thing, though, is if Wiles and Zoll and Burkhart had any idea what was going on at this economic forum. Like, did they think it was like Jesus supply and demand sort of thing?
I mean, I wonder if he knows that Jesus was a Jew.
That's a very good point. I don't think he realizes that.
Jesus was an apocalyptic Jew.
Yeah, Jesus was not a Christian.
The only difference between Rick Wiles and Jesus is that Jesus wasn't ashamed of being a Jew. Right?
That's true.
And he liked the Jews. Obviously, his followers were Jews.
True.
He was a Jew. I don't understand anti-Semitism from Christians.
I really don't.
I don't understand it in general, but especially from Christians. Especially because they're like apparently Judeo-Christian.
Right. Like their entire, like half of their book, rather, is based on... Ooh, you can do that. We're looking at all the things
I have amazing admin power.
I love it. I forgot what I was saying. So, yeah, I'm also wondering what he could have contributed to the whole thing. Like, I realize he has press credentials and stuff, but I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. We'll get it figured out one day. Yeah, I genuinely, I mean, I realized they had press credentials, so they didn't really need to know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I wouldn't know what was going on. And somehow I doubt Rick Wiles would know what was going on.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I somehow doubt that. So let's move on. Let's move on to across the pond. So that's always fun, right? Specifically to Liverpool. Because good news from Liverpool. And actually, before we talk about Liverpool, I want to point out that my browser extension, Make America Kittens Again, doesn't only block Donald Trump, it also blocks people like Robert Jeffress and Paula White, who we'll talk about next week, and Franklin Graham. So the latest on Franklin Graham, who is, of course, the son of the late Billy Graham, noted hate preacher and televangelist who was once dubbed God's ambassador. The latest news is that his scheduled appearance at ACC Liverpool on June 12th has since been canceled.
Really?
Yes. So when asked about the reason for the cancellation, a spokesperson for ACC Liverpool, which is apparently just a big old venue, they said they were made aware of a number of statements which we consider to be incompatible with our values, which is great because they're just a venue.
I love Europe.
I say they're just a venue. They're a very large venue apparently. What's even better is that the mayor of Liverpool, his name is Joe Anderson, he actually tweeted this. Our city is a diverse city and proud of our LGBTQ plus community and always will be.
Oh.
We cannot allow hatred and intolerance to go unchallenged by anyone, including by religious groups or sects.
Nice.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And of course, the tour is still scheduled. He's still going across the UK. He has stops scheduled in Glasgow, Newcastle, Sheffield, Milton Keynes, Cardiff, Birmingham, and London. But we'll see if those stick around because there have been, I don't know if this is a word, protestations?
Mm-hmm.
That's a word. Yay.
Protestations.
Protestations from LGBTQ plus groups in Sheffield by what's called the Sheffield City Trust. And the protestations were a letter signed by 22 representatives of the city's LGBTQ plus community, but no word on if that actually is going to take root.
Huh.
So, what's the over-under on how long it takes for Franklin Graham to cry?
Persecution?
Yes, persecution.
Oh, this could actually lead into what book I'm reading. How long ago was that?
This was relatively recent. I got it from the BBC, probably within the last week. Let me double check and make sure.
Oh yeah, it was the other day. 26th.
Oh yeah,
January 26th.
So
oh,
Sunday.
Man. What day was it?
Sunday.
Wednesday.
Today.
I'm gonna give it. Well, no, that's today.
Yeah, that's today. Do you think he knows yet?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Definitely knows. I imagine if I went to his Twitter, it's already on there.
Oh, yeah, chances are.
And, yeah, and Maya says to form the words. I would say it already happened, and I don't know if he actually speaks at his church. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's... you got me. I don't know.
But if that's the case, yes, they can't help themselves. They have to... This is something that they believe that Jesus said was going to happen, and they take this stuff as confirmation of Jesus's words that this is the persecution. Forget the fact yet again that there's actual persecution happening with actual Christians. Okay, and in the over the world. I mean, you look at China and you look at places in the Middle East, right? And there's actual persecution. People are actually dying,
right?
And they're kept in solitary confinement for years simply because they're Christian.
That's a thing. That is something that genuinely happens.
Yeah. So for them to say this, but this is the narrative that they want. This is the narrative that they have been pushing. This is the evangelical. It was far right. It's more mainstream now.
Yeah.
Narrative that whenever somebody says something that is contrary or counter to our specific views, equality equals persecution. When people have access to the same things that, like, this is the same thing with your MRAs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so where it's like, whenever women and minorities and gender fluid people, everything, when every single sect of the population has equal access, you get these folks that see that as persecution. And it is a complex that stems very specifically from this part of this religion. Not the entire religion's not like that.
No.
But we have gone from the ideas of, if we look at think of Achilles, when he went to Troy and was murdering all the Troyish.
Trojan?
There it is.
That one.
He was breaking all of them in half, right? He was the 2% that got through. That's a condom joke. And
I was going to say, don't you want to not break Trojans in half?
I was going to say, yeah.
But,
And when he had somebody like a Trojan warrior at the end of his sword, the Trojan warrior was crying and pleading with him, don't kill me, don't take my life type stuff. And Achilles looked down on this person like, die a manly death. And that was the thing, because you find pride and honor in dying, and they put this like a man. And that's the pride that they, well, even so, but the pride that they get behind that, that doing something for oneself. We even look at, Agamemnes.
Agamemnon?
Agamemnon.
There we
Anyways,
go.
I had it right, but then I lost it. Agamemnon's daughter, even, right? Where he screws up horribly, and he ends up getting her killed. But she figures that that her, deciding not to take a stand and not to cry, but rather to stand there and say, my death will ensure that that the Greeks get across the sea and that they are able to take over Troy. And so she takes it wholeheartedly. She stands there and says yes. And from that, we have moved from people. Now these are myths, obviously, but that's, even the myth of like Socrates and how he died. We've moved from that, from grace and from honor, to equality equals persecution.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the level that it has kind of sunk to.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, people are very frustrating in so many different ways.
I can take care of that if you want me to.
Sure.
All right. Hey, Joe Bob Smokin' Fan. It has been wonderful getting to know you here. And I appreciate all of your comments. So we don't allow ableist slurs. Stop crying on the internet and go do something. Well, we are doing something.
That's true.
Bald-headed queer. Well, you got half of that right. Fat pig. I don't know. And then you dumbass liberals are ruining this country. Appreciate you saying that, but we're going to go ahead and ask you to leave. So.
Sounds great.
Dr. Surreal, how's it going? Go ahead.
So, let's move on. This one's actually kind of depressing, and I'm very, very sorry.
Oh, man.
But every once in a while, we do have to cover the sad stuff. Because this is very sad. This is definitely a case of how religion can be harmful. It is not necessarily all the time harmful. But, so there were two young ultra-Orthodox women who jumped to their deaths in Jerusalem over the weekend.
Oh, yeah. With
their suicide notes citing sexual abuse as children and a struggle with leaving the faith as the reasons for their completion of suicide. So Hani Solish, who was 19 from, I'm going to say this so very wrong, Netanya, I'm very, very sorry for saying that wrong, and Sarah Klapman, who was 24 from Jerusalem. They were members of the Chabad movement, I think I said that right, which, according to Wikipedia, is one of the world's best-known Hasidic movements that focuses primarily on outreach activities like reading the Megillah for hospital patients on Purim.
Where's it at?
That one.
Yeah, Purim.
I apologize for not knowing how to say things. And setting up a sukkah on the town's main street during the Sukkot holiday. This is a test in how well Susan can pronounce things. One of the young women who, it really drove me bonkers that the article kept referring to these women as girls.
Yeah.
They kept saying these two girls, and I'm like, they're not girls.
Yeah.
They're not. So, stop. So one of the young women was allegedly abused by a relative. The relative was later arrested and convicted of the abuse. He was sentenced to service and released on parole a decade ago. And the young woman who was struggling with her faith was incredibly afraid of disappointing her parents, which is a big deal in the Chabad community. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a really big... I feel like that's a big deal in any religious community.
Yeah.
But that's... It's particularly bad in a lot of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities.
Yeah.
They also had a WhatsApp group chat where the girls were talking about, struggles they were having, particularly struggles with their faith. And apparently when the other young women, who were in this group chat, whenever they found out that their friends had completed suicide, that they had to go to those young women's houses and make sure that they weren't going to harm themselves too.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, which, that's the whole thing is just very, very, it's very sad. It is very much, it's unnecessary in that we need to not put such high expectations on people, especially if they're your children. Learn that they are their own people. They are not just extensions of you. They have their own thoughts and feelings and experiences, and people need to understand that about children, about tiny humans, about humans in general. That they all have different experiences. Everyone is living a different experience than you are. So, I really hope that they rest in peace, and it's incredibly maddening that they weren't able to find the comfort that they so obviously should have been afforded during their time here on Earth.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
Yeah. So this is our last section in the news this evening. So news is relatively short because Nathaniel has an amazing deep dive for you. I'm very excited about it.
Do I?
Yes, you do.
I've been working on it.
You have. He's been working very, very hard on this, so I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, I can tell you that putting every thought that I have regarding this onto paper, I could probably write a book about it.
Chances are.
I kept writing more and more, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to move to the next bullet point. And I was like, yeah, but...
You're like, I still have so much that I could add. So, lastly, this evening, Nathaniel.
Yes, love.
Are you familiar with the name Paige Patterson?
Yeah. Why am I...
So, if you're not familiar with Paige Patterson, let me refresh your memory. Are you familiar with a former Southern Baptist Convention leader that not only taught women who were trapped in abusive relationships and marriages to stay and pray, he also made lewd and creepy comments about an underage girl and told an alleged rape victim not to go to the police and just forgive her rapist? That's the guy we're talking about.
Sounds familiar.
Very familiar. Yeah, so he's that guy. He's super awful. So awful, in fact, that the current head of the Southern Baptist Convention, who's named J.D. Greer, has literally warned pastors against having Patterson speak at their events and at their churches during service.
Huh.
Greer told the Houston Chronicle, "I advise any Southern Baptist church to consider the severe action before having Dr. Patterson preach or speak, and to contact trustee officers if additional information is necessary." So realistically, because all of the Baptist churches are individually, like, they're self-governed, they have their individual autonomy, he can't really tell them what to do. But this is one of those cases where if the head of the SBC says jump through these hoops, you jump through those very Baptist-y hoops.
Almost always.
Yeah.
Yes.
Granted, he didn't flat out say how awful Patterson is.
As bad as Steven Anderson.
He is...
It's a different kind of bigotry.
Yeah, it's a different kind of bad. He's not... Greer actually isn't going so far as to say, like, we need to full-on condemn this guy. We need to completely stop... Oh, no. We need to completely stop giving him any sort of recognition at all. Greer has not said that yet. So even so, since each of the churches is entirely self-governing, they have the right to host anyone they want to, even with the head of the Southern Baptist Convention warning against it. So Greer's comments came after some churches received criticism over hosting Patterson, with Patterson even being honored as a defender of the faith.
Really?
You want to guess who did that?
Not Jeffress.
No.
No.
It is up here, though.
Not, what's his name up here? Who was it?
It was Victory Baptist Church in Rowlett.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's redonk. So, and also Patterson and another former SBC president named Jerry Vines totally tried to conceal allegations of sexual misconduct faced by one Daryl Gilliard. I don't even know who that guy is, so, I mean, I guess they succeeded. I'm really not sure if I want to look him up either, so. Patterson also said that if the SBC decided to elect its first African-American president, the convention would slide a long way back, and went on to question the religious knowledge of among many of the ethnic groups.
Why?
Because apparently if you have a black person in any sort of position of power, it means that the world has gone mad, I tell you. Completely bonkers. I don't know. I can't follow that line of thinking. I genuinely can't.
I know that that type of bigotry is not, it's not rare.
No.
Oh, by the way, folks, for whatever reason, I know that the comments don't necessarily work on Periscope. We can see every single comment that you put.
We can.
I can see them, but I can also see, and Maya is correct as well, but I can see, or we can see every single one of your comments. Mm-hmm. I have to check and see if there's like a different setting for Periscope or something, because on here, whenever we go into Periscope and whenever I make a comment, it automatically goes onto Twitch and onto YouTube, but it doesn't automatically go onto Facebook or Periscope. So
I don't think anybody's really talking on Facebook though. We have one comment from Hillary.
Hey, that's enough.
She commented a little bit ago, so that's
enough.
good.
Hey, Max, good
Max.
to see you. So just so you know, that's the little thing we're going to try and figure out.
Yeah. I have confidence in us that we will be able to.
Let me see if it'll... Nope, well, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, gosh. Open up Max's profile. Well, that's taking forever, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's just got so much information that's going on with it. It's all like, I don't know what to do with myself.
See, so it shows up right here.
Yeah.
But if you go actually into the chat on Periscope, it won't.
Takes a minute.
Yeah, or it won't show up at all.
Oh, that's
so
weird.
Things, and you'll notice right here as well that I did it from Periscope, so it works.
Yeah.
But if I put a comment in the restream on the app or on the website, it won't show up in Periscope. I have to go into Periscope to do that.
Bummer.
So
we'll figure it out.
And then I also can't do it from my phone either because it doesn't work in the app or something. I don't know. Oh well.
All right. So our next segment this evening is going to be our deep dive. We haven't quite figured out a fancy schmancy name for it yet, but I think we will.
Yep.
One day. I have every bit of confidence in us. So to start off this week's deep dive, what's the basic TLDR of your deep dive this evening? Do we have something that's
like before I actually get into the DR or the too long part? Put this over here.
Cool. I mean, do you have like an elevator pitch for it?
It is. I don't think that Jesus ever actually claimed to be God. I don't think that he believed he was God.
That's fair. All right, let's get into it.
So that's really it. So that's what this week's deep dive is about. And then at the end, whenever I am done, by the way, if you have questions or comments regarding that while I am going into this, we're not going to address them while I'm talking because I'm going to try to get through this at the end of this. Susan has some questions that some of them that we put in there prior to this, as well as any that she writes down while I am going over this and while I'm reading this. And then if you have any, feel free to put them. We can see all of your comments.
Yes.
May not be able to respond to all of them in the chat, but we can see every single one of your comments. So if you put one in there, we will respond to it if we do see it. So let's go ahead and get started here.
Yep.
All right, I'd like to begin this deep dive by saying I am not denying that early Christians believed Jesus was divine. They absolutely did. What his divinity meant to the early sects of religion, while important and a detail we should discuss in another segment, is also not the focus of this particular conversation. The question is specific on purpose. Did Jesus think he was God, and did he claim to be God? The answer to answer this question, we must turn to the only source which records the purported words of Jesus, the New Testament of the Christian Bible. Now, while Paul wrote more of the 27 books included in the New Testament, scholars agree, by the way, that he wrote 7 of the 13 attributed to him, which is still more than any other author. He did not meet Jesus while he was alive. It is important to note, while Paul considered Jesus God when he was writing his letters, and of course there's a contention to be made of that he may not have considered Jesus God in that same sense, and it's something you and I spoke about last night. But again, that's something else for another conversation. He never said Jesus claimed to be divine, and this is true. The words of Jesus are in 4 books, the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. When we look to those Gospels, we do find instances of Jesus implicitly stating he is God. There are a total of, I wrote 5, I meant 4, all in one book. John chapter 8:58, Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, before Abraham was, I am." And that, of course, is alluding to the book of Exodus, when when Yahweh tells Moses, "Tell them I am." John 10:30, "I and the Father are one." John 14:9, "The one who has seen me has seen the Father." And John 17:24, when he says, "Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am, and to see my glory, the glory you have given me, because you loved me before the creation of the world." When I either read these to listeners or have them pointed out to me, the response I receive from both Christians and skeptics is, well, there it is. Jesus claimed to be God. I would normally agree, but there is an incredible amount of evidence to the contrary. In order to determine if certain events and sayings can be traced back to Jesus, historians and scholars utilize 3 criteria: independent attestation, dissimilarity, and contextual credibility. Let's examine these scriptures and the Gospel of John as a whole through this lens. Independent attestation means considering the authenticity of a claim by attempting to locate a story or tradition in multiple sources. These sources should be contemporary to or close to the time of the supposed events. The sources should be independent of one another, which is a trait that I'll go into in a moment, and the sources should corroborate, meaning they should agree. Is John contemporary or close to the time of the supposed events? The consensus of scholars and historians put the writing of the Gospel of Mark between 70 and 75 CE, and John was the last of the 4 written between 90 and 95 CE. One could say that they put John even later, but this is a minority view. Even so, John, written 60 to 65 years after the death of Jesus, is not a contemporary of the other Gospels, much less the life of Jesus. Are the claims of the source independent of one another? The way scholars attempt to figure this out is to line up the sources. Because the Gospels are anonymous and explicitly tell us they were not eyewitnesses, we know they had a source. Mark was the first written, as mentioned, around 70 to 75 CE. Matthew was written after Mark and copied about 95% of the original Greek. Luke was written after Matthew and copied a large chunk of that gospel, and thus about 53% of Mark. Because these are copied from Mark, the original source would be Mark. Anything that is found in Matthew, but none of the other Gospels, came from a different source, M. The same can be said for Luke. Anything written in Luke and not found in the others, meaning Matthew and Mark, comes from another source that usually is called L. The sayings of Jesus, which are shared between Matthew and Luke that are not in Mark, come from the same source, Q.
Which makes me laugh.
I hope everybody is confused.
Makes me laugh every time.
Yep. John was independent of all the Gospels and their sources. In this way, we have the following independent sources: Mark, M, L, Q, and John. Any claim made in Mark and mentioned in Matthew is not independent, and conversely, a claim made in Matthew and in John would be considered independent attestation. The more independent claims, the more likely something is to be accurate.
That makes sense.
Yep. By the same token, any claim made by just one source, especially further from the supposed events, is less likely to be accurate. John contains more unique claims about Jesus and his ministry than any of the other Gospels, making it the most dependently attested of the four. Consider the four scriptures in which Jesus claims to be God. As mentioned, they are only found in John and do not corroborate with the other Gospels in which Jesus speaks about the coming Son of Man in the third person while speaking about the coming apocalypse, something Jesus never mentions in John. Because they are only in John and not found in earlier sources, especially Mark, these other scriptures where he claims to be God, they are already unlikely to have been said. This is, of course, this violates. It does not mean that they were not said. However, it does make them the most unlikely. Do the sources corroborate? As we can see from the independent attestation, they do not. There are multiple irreconcilable claims made throughout the Gospels, with John carrying the bulk of contradictions regarding the Passion narrative. I am happy to go into these irreconcilable differences in another conversation with any who would like, but it is not the topic of this discussion. Needless to say, the sources do not corroborate. And based on what I have mentioned prior, we can also say that John is not multiply attested. So what we know is that the sources do not corroborate and John is not multiply attested. We must also consider the criterion of dissimilarity, probably the more confusing of the three. So if you've been confused so far, it gets better from here.
Does it though?
Well, better depending on how you use the word. In this criterion, scholars are able to determine the accuracy of a claim based on how likely it would have been for future Christian scribes to make it up. I realize how backward it seems when we first speak about it, so I will provide examples.
Okay, good.
Which I do, and there are a lot of them.
Thank you.
I put together like 3 of them, and I have about 9 more that I can bring to the table.
That's not surprising.
Yeah. In Matthew chapter 2, Mark chapter 1, Luke 4, and John 1, Jesus is known to come from Nazareth. This doesn't seem like anything to us because we just read it. And because, of course, if you're in the United States or in North America, Nazareth is way over there. And it just seems like another Israeli town.
Right.
But this is because we don't consider what Nazareth was like during the life of Jesus. It was a small town with not more than 100 inhabitants in the far north of Israel. Jesus claimed to be of the line of David, the king of the Jews, the Messiah foretold by the prophets.
Right.
Why would this person come from Nazareth instead of Jerusalem, the home of David? Because it is multiply attested and it's difficult to see anybody making something like this up, it is probable that Jesus was from Nazareth. Another example is the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist. The story is in Mark 1, Matthew 3, and Luke 3. It's difficult to think of a reason a Christian scribe writing decades later would have Jesus, who they considered to be God, learning under John the Baptist and being baptized by him. After all, why would God need to be baptized for the remission of sins? Because of this, it is likely that John baptized Jesus. Conversely, the story in John chapter 1 speaks about John the Baptist telling the crowds about Jesus and includes phrases to ensure they know Jesus is above all and will baptize with fire. This is not independently attested and is something a Christian would later make up based on his theology, so it makes it more unlikely. Finally, as we can see in Mark and is independently attested in Matthew and Luke, Jesus had anguish when considering his impending crucifixion and death. No Christian would want the story of a person they believe to be God in such pain and agony, so it is unlikely they'd make it up. And again, John is the opposite. There is no anguish, no trepidation. In John 17, 1-2, Jesus prays this, "Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you. For you granted him authority over all people, that he might give eternal life to those you have given him." And when Jesus is speaking in the third person here, he's speaking about himself. Which again, this is another thing that we would know that somebody made up.
Yeah.
And also the conversation that he has there with God when he's praying, and this is another way that we know that Jesus wasn't God because he's praying to God.
Yeah.
Is it's stark. There's a stark difference between that and the prayer that he has in Mark, where it says that he prayed so much he literally bled. He had sweated, tears of blood.
Right.
That's obviously a metaphor, but even so, this is a stark difference. And thus this is, and I'll continue here, additionally, when Judas returns with the soldiers and chief priests in John 18, Jesus, instead of waiting, went to them and demanded to know who they were looking for. When they told him, we're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus said, "I am he." And all those sent to arrest him fell to the ground. Then Jesus asks them again who they're looking for. And he is told, when told again, he said, Jesus of Nazareth, he says, "I told you I am he." So he's being, Billy Badass or, Yeshua Badass.
Super badass.
Yeah.
Super Jesus.
This is only found in John and is a belief a later Christian writer would have held, thus failing the criterion of dissimilarity. The story of there's another example of this, and it's kind of funny because it's also in John, and it's all four of the Gospels talk about the disciple who rears up and cuts off the ear, right? And it goes after one of the soldiers or one of the chief priests, and in all of them, Jesus is like, "What are you doing?" And it's only in the book of Luke that Jesus puts the ear back on. So here's what we can say from this. We can say that because this is from independent attestation, and because it's not something somebody would make up, because these are not warriors and Jesus was not a warrior,
right,
that it's likely that somebody did try to have violence. What's unlikely, based upon dissimilarity, is that because they would have later made up that he was able to repair that person's ear. And so these are the differences that we find, and it's contextual variance.
Does that count as a miracle?
I think so. I would imagine that.
I think so. I just making sure.
Yeah. And then finally, there is the criterion of contextual credibility. This is always an amusing conversation because evangelicals often tell me that I'm taking the scripture out of context.
Every time.
While they continue to take a scripture at its face value and make no consideration to whether the events described would have actually been the beliefs or the sayings of first century Jews. In John, Jesus makes claims that nobody knows the hour when the Son of Man will return. But this is not the case of the apocalyptic Jesus found in the Synoptics. Mark 13, Q, Matthew 13, and Luke 21 all show Jesus speaking about the apocalypse, which was soon to be upon them, in more than one instance, stating some of the disciples would still be alive when it happened. In John, Jesus is not preaching an apocalyptic message at all. In fact, it's the opposite of what we find in the Synoptics. The apocryphal Gospel of Thomas goes even further, showing Jesus speaking directly against the coming apocalypse. First century Jews had no thought of the Messiah as a god. So we can conclude that Jesus would not have said these things and retained his followers. Additionally, Jesus is said only in John that he is the one who forgives sins. In Mark, Matthew, and Luke, God forgives sins through Jesus. We see this when he heals the lame, when he says that through God your sins are forgiven. The cultural context shows us the deified verses in John were written by those who had no interaction with first century Palestine or its culture, and had not read the apocalyptic literature found in the Dead Sea Scrolls and in the writings of Enoch. The words attributed to Jesus in the book of John meet exactly zero of the criterion used by historians to establish accuracy: independent attestation, dissimilarity, and contextual credibility. These are theological claims which show the beliefs of the person who wrote the Gospel of John. Now, there's other ways we can tell that Jesus never claimed to be God either. 1, the only God or divine being in the Roman Empire was Caesar, and those who claimed to be God were crucified. Jesus saying he was God would probably be considered the most important claim he ever made, and yet we don't find it in any of the earliest and most trustworthy sources.
Right.
Mark, Matthew, and Luke, which means that Q, L, and M. So we have multiple. That's always fun to try to explain to people. Jesus was crucified. I believe it was a historical event with independent attestation. Not everybody agrees with me.
I don't.
However, he was not crucified for claiming to be God. He was crucified for claiming to be the King of the Jews. It's even written and placed above his head while he's on the cross. Had he claimed to be God, Pilate would not have asked questions and would simply have had him executed. Similarly, if Jesus were walking around Jerusalem the week before the Passover, gaining large crowds of followers and claiming to be God, he would not have lasted the day. Everything that we know of first century Palestine, everything that we know of the writings of the writings of the apocalyptic preachers of the time, and there were a lot of them, lends credence, and as well as how late the Gospel of John was written, lends credence to the fact that I believe that there is no reason for us, outside of additional evidence that's presented that we don't currently have, for us to believe that Jesus himself believed he was God.
Okay. But, so question.
Yeah.
Did Jesus actually think he was the Messiah? Because we've established that they're... Or am I thinking of a different conversation? Basically, did he actually think it was the Messiah?
Yes.
Okay.
Jesus believed he was the Messiah, and his disciples believed that as well.
Okay. So, what's the difference? Like, if he thought it was the Messiah, why does that not mean that he... Or wouldn't that...
Mean he's God?
Yeah.
Yeah, the issue here is that Christians today often think that Messiah and deity mean the same thing.
Oh.
That's not correct.
Oh.
In Hebrew, Messiah means the one who is anointed, and specifically the one who is chosen and specially honored by God. In the Old Testament, you look at 1 Samuel, and you look at that Saul is the one who is anointed. And then you look later on, David is the one who is anointed. And if you notice something particular there, it's that both David and Saul are kings. And David is even told that his line of rule will never cease to sit on the throne in Israel. And we could get into like how problematic that is in a different conversation. But Jesus, who we are told is of the line of David, he considered himself the Messiah, who would be the King of the Jews when the Son of Man returned.
So, the disciples were following. Did they think the same thing as disciples?
Yeah, for sure. He even tells them himself in Matthew chapter 19 when he says that at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, that's the actual Greek.
Glorious.
You who have followed me will sit also on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And then you look at Luke chapter 22, and it says, "And I confer on you a kingdom, just as my Father conferred one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on the thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel." In these passages, it's obvious that Jesus saw both himself as the King of the Jews and his disciples as the rulers of the 12 tribes of Israel. He was going to be the King of Kings. The disciples did not consider the Messiah to be somebody who was going to die and rise from the dead. There was zero expectation of that from any Jewish writing or tradition. They thought Jesus was going to be the Messiah who would lead the Jews in overthrowing Rome and throwing off the chains of bondage and establish Israel once again. Now, being apocalypticists, they were probably quite confused as to why Jesus, the pacifist and he of the turn the other cheek, told them to do that instead of rallying other Jews to take up arms.
Okay, so you mentioned Q, which made me giggle, L, and M. How many sources were there?
It's possible that there were a multitude of sources, but these are the three that we can definitively say existed. Q, which comes from the German word Quelle, means source. And these are by the way, that's what a lot of folks don't know that. I think a lot of folks actually think of Q as where Mark got his sources from. But Q is actually the words of Jesus that are found in both Matthew and Luke, but are not in Mark. Q is sometimes known as the saying source. And so that's where the word source comes from, and you get it in Quelle in German. And everything about it is this whole thing with just the words of Jesus. And anything, of course, that we find in Mark, and we know that it's also in Q because it's we can find it in both Matthew and Luke as well. And then you have L and M are the sources for the claims that are made in Luke, but not in Matthew or Mark, and Matthew, but not in Luke or Mark. And they are thus independent sources. So the independent sources that we have in the New Testament, and I think this is something that a lot of skeptics kind of overlook, is that we have Mark as an independent source, and then we have Q, we have the sayings source, and then we have L and we have M, and then we have John. John is an independent source. It is the one that is the most likely to be inaccurate.
Right.
But we have all five sources. And so when we look at this, and again, we look at these criterions of dissimilarity, we look at independent attestation, we look at contextual credibility, and we look, in order to find those, we take all of these sources and we lay them out individually side by side, and we say what matches,
right,
and then we say, okay, what sticks out.
Yeah. And
this even comes later on when we read things about Paul, and we read some of this is how we also I have figured out that Paul didn't write six of the letters that are ascribed to his name.
Oh.
And this is also how we figure out some of like the literary creeds and stuff, like in the book of Romans chapter 1. And you'll get a lot of apologists that will quote the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 13. And then they for whatever reason don't get into something like Philippians, where it begins with two stanzas that some folks think is a hymn, but is more likely than not a poem that Paul certainly didn't write, and it's in two stanzas as well. And we actually, it's one of the times we see the "but as" that Paul uses.
Yeah, we were talking about that last night. Yeah, that is fascinating to me.
Galatians chapter 4, verse 13 or 14. It's the place where Paul sees Jesus as an angel.
Right.
He says that you welcomed me as an angel, as Jesus.
Yeah.
Right, and so the "but as."
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
and then what's the other one like?
It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, where he says, "Because you are just out of this world as infants in Christ," and so he uses the "but as" there.
Yeah.
To where he says, many people would think of you like this, but you are this as this. So what it does is it adds additional information or an extra adjective onto what this is.
Right.
And so it's a literary device that's used by Paul. And so when we look over at Galatians chapter 4, what we can see is that Paul is saying the same thing. Paul considered Jesus to be an angel, the messenger of God, to where he is part of God, but not God Almighty. And this is where it became an issue with the early Christians, with different sects of Christianity, to where you have Paul telling them these things. You have the church at Corinth believing that it was a spirit.
Right.
You didn't have anybody, by the way, who thought that Jesus was divine while he was on earth.
Right.
There were some like exaltation is a phrase that a couple of scholars like to use. Exaltation divinity type things to where when he rose from the dead, that's when he became God.
Right.
And that's what you usually get, by the way. Apollonius got that, and he was, the Apollonians would have followed him. You look at some of the other ones too that they, whenever they die, so Hercules is one of them.
Yeah.
Where he's like deified, but he gains immortality after he dies.
Yeah.
And so you
what
see
did
that.
Attis get?
He just cut off his dick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
Attis is my favorite.
yeah, Sibylle is. Whenever we should definitely go over that mythology at some point.
I would like to. Actually, I think I know what I want to do for next week, but 2 weeks I want to do anything having to do with Attis.
And I think one of the things that we can actually see there is that's one of the ways that we can tell that the Gospel of Thomas was written much later, because it shows this type of divinic, like deified Jesus while he's walking on earth. Now we do know that God in the Bible is known to do stuff like that. We look in the Old Testament, he's walking through the garden. He's obviously a person.
Right.
When you look in later on when we have the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah, and God is obviously walking as people.
Right.
He's talking to I think he's talking to not Moses. I think Abraham.
Yeah.
He's like, what if I can find 5 people that are awesome? And God's like, fine. And so you have a lot of that where people may have thought that, now mind you, this wasn't, but the Messiah wasn't going to be God incarnate. And so anytime that we read these they're like apocryphal texts, like Thomas and the Gospel of Judas Iscariot, any of the Gnostic Gospels.
James about their Jesus. Is that one of them?
The Gospel of James is an infancy gospel.
Infancy, okay. Which, again, just makes me think of, like, baby Jesus going around and turning water into wine. Like, doing the whole walking around thing like he does in the one.
Which, by the way, but that only happens
in
once.
Salome.
That only happens once.
Or with Salome, rather.
Yeah, Salome in the Thanos hand.
Yeah.
That only happened, the water into wine only happens one time, which is how we know that it likely didn't happen, by the way.
Right.
And what we also get is that they did not expect Jesus to rise from the dead. This is something that I try to get across in my conversations with people, especially because he is we're not close friends, but a guy that I have conversations with, his name is Hunter. On his Twitter profile, it says, if there's no empty tomb, there's no Christianity, or something like that. And the issue with that is that if we look into the Bible, and this, by the way, is how we can know that the disciples did not believe that Jesus was God, was read the Gospels. Even Mark, from 9 to 21, from chapter 16, add on 9 to 21, which we know are not originally there.
Right.
And when you're reading them, put them side by side. Go Mark, Matthew, Luke, and even John. How many of those folks were convinced by the empty tomb? Women or disciples, it doesn't matter. And the answer is 0.
Yeah.
So none of them were convinced by the empty tomb, which means that none of them believed that Jesus was God incarnate.
Right.
Which makes it even more unlikely that, and I should have put that in my notes, and I apologize for not doing that, but that makes it even more unlikely that Jesus said he was God, because they would have expected it. Now, they would have also been very confused as to why is God dying. That seems odd.
Yeah.
And they, of course, had no concept of that. They had an idea of dualism because that's an apocalyptic thing.
Right.
But they had no concept of the Trinitarian view, which would come around hundreds of years later.
Who was the one who sort of stuck us with the Trinitarian view?
Oh.
Is that Catholics?
Well, it would end up being the Orthodox, yes. They were the Orthodoxy. Orthodox only means, right way of thinking.
Right,
so
yeah.
I guess everything we think is Orthodox.
That's true.
But that would be hundreds of years later. But everything that we read in the New Testament, even with Paul, Paul considered Jesus part of God. Right? But you look at the disciples, none of them believed that Jesus was God. They believed he was the Messiah. If we read the book of Mark, the Messiah, of course, was somebody they believed was going to, as I mentioned, overthrow Rome they ran away.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that is because how can the Messiah lead us in battle if he's dead?
It's true.
And so that's why you have in the book of, even in the book of John, and this didn't happen, but at least as far as we can tell, but in the book of John, you even have people there crying because he's dying.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they cry if he said he was God?
Right.
And if he was going to rise again in 3 days? It simply is not something that would happen.
That's true.
So
it's very true.
There you go.
I like it.
That
very
is,
nice.
That is my my stump speech there.
Deep dive into Messiahhood.
Yeah, let's read the comments here. See if we got any. Whoa, boop, and I'm gonna do this. That right there. What do we got? Let me see here. So
did you mention that one?
Trolls. Which one? That one. 2 Corinthians 2:17 doesn't matter because that's not something Jesus said.
That's true.
What's funny is I actually mentioned this. I mentioned this. This is.
I thought it was a different verse in Corinthians that you did.
I think it was.
It's
2 Corinthians. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
But this is not. These aren't in Corinthians. Are not the words of Jesus.
That's true.
That's
true.
We ask, who did Jesus say he was?
Right.
Jesus believed he was the Messiah. He did not believe that he was going to die. Mm-hmm. That's obvious in the synoptics.
But does anybody really believe they're going to die right before they die, though? I don't know. Fuck if I know.
And then he didn't want to die either.
Yeah, because he spends that time, like, before the Last Supper, before he's captured.
When they go to the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah. He goes and he, like, begs and pleads with God for a while.
Yeah, please take this cup from me and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's more likely to have happened than what happened in John, where he's like, all right, it's time to do this.
Yeah.
Just put on my crucifix face.
Do this.
Yeah, you can see him like doing some calisthenics and stuff.
Doofy doing that.
Yeah, lifting some weights.
I mean, he is super Jesus, so it's to be expected.
Take a tree out of the ground. Oh, I got this.
Stump
speeches. You got to flog me?
Maybe he'll like it.
SS 1964 said Jesus said he was not God and the only good one is Elohim in Luke 18:18. Not the exact phrasing he used, but yes. Wings of Sniffer said, all right, losers stay poor, Trump 2020. I don't know how that works, but...
Yeah, not sure what that has to do with anything.
Yeah,
okay.
I appreciate the comment. SS 1964 says, my take after I read all the Abrahamic books is Yahweh is the ultimate authoritarian and the prophets are ultimate sheep for Yahweh, including Jesus of the Christian New Testament. All right. A couple of folks talking in the chat. And then it says Yahweh is a man of war in Exodus also. Yeah, it certainly does. Exodus is not a fun book to read. Yeah.
He's a genocidal maniac.
Yeah, but appreciate all of your comments.
Yes, thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. That was really good, babe.
Thanks.
That was fascinating.
I have so much more I could have added to it.
I know.
God.
You always have so much more that you can add though, because you are knowledgeable about like every single thing.
Not everything.
Most things.
I could write a book on it. I really could.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna move on. What are we calling the book segment anyway? Did we ever decide? Not Oprah's Book Club, because we can't call it that.
We can't call it not Oprah's Book Club.
I mean, she might sue us.
What Oprah's Book Club wishes it were.
Maybe.
And there's 5 people watching on Periscope.
I think if we have anything to do with Oprah, that's probably not
the way we want to do it.
Yeah, not the best idea. I don't know. Well, this is a segment of the show where we are talking about the books that we are reading right now.
Yeah.
Your books are very, very similar to everything that you just talked about.
Yeah, you can go
and Christian persecution.
Yeah. It is. I mean, you can go over yours.
Yeah. So there's 2 books that I'm technically in the middle of right now. The first one that I started reading, actually, I started reading in like November.
So I'm not getting.
I don't know.
Where are these? Because I can't see them.
those are it. So they're backwards.
Not Oprah's book club. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I think it stopped showing.
Dan says, objectively, Dan from Periscope says, Oprah's club book.
That might work.
Sounds like a sandwich.
It does sound like a sandwich. I don't know. Something we can think about. If you have any ideas for what we can call the book segment, let us know. So there's two books that I'm technically sort of in the middle of. One of them is one that I started reading when we were at Big Bend. It's about how the country music. It's not. It doesn't say connected somehow. I don't know.
No, we're connected.
I don't know. It's about how country music in the 70s was changed by people like Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson and people like that. So it's very fascinating to me because that's the kind of music that I really, really love is, all of the sort of alt country stuff. I can't remember for the life of me what it's called. I'm trying to remember, but I can't remember. Why would you not enable super hearts? Now we're good. And then the other one that I started reading is one, I think it's called Eliza and Alex. So I've been on a Hamilton kick lately.
Yeah.
Because we're going
for good reason.
Yeah. Because we're going and seeing Hamilton in June.
There's never a bad reason to be on a Hamilton kick. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. So an advertisement for a book came across my news feed on Facebook. And I'm pretty sure it's called Eliza and Alex. It's basically it's like a trilogy that's the love story between Elizabeth Schuyler and Alexander Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it's historical fiction because we don't know a lot of stuff. So, but yeah, it's good so far. It is a lot of liberties taken with it, but so far it's really good. I mean, what do you expect from historical fiction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you reading?
I am reading, this is super cool, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The analytics built into Restream. I want to give them money. Because what I'm trying to do, because Tanya's there, and then, of course, objectively, Dan is writing comments as well. And for whatever reason, I'd like to point out, it's not showing the comments from Periscope onto YouTube or onto our Restream. Huh. Yeah, I know.
Which it would be a lot busier if it was showing that.
Right?
Yeah, because usually you get a lot of comments for that.
I know.
I don't know.
The book that I am reading, back here, there it is.
Gotta reach and get it.
Yep.
Mine are on my Kindle, so it's like I don't have physical copies of them.
I have to have physical copies. I can't now, mind you, I have some digital copies of books, but I also have the physicals. The one I'm reading is called The Myth of Persecution: How Early Christians Invented the Story of Martyrdom. It's by Candida Moss. She is, this is going to surprise some people, she's a Roman Catholic.
Yeah, I remember you talking about this one. Yeah.
And she is at Oxford now. She taught religious studies at Notre Dame, to which I said, did they know she was writing this book? And she gets into, and I recommend this, by the way, you can find it. That's the thing. I'm going to find the publisher for this and put it into the chat. Because I do recommend this book. I would not.
Oh, yeah.
I read some books that I don't recommend. Hi, Richard Carrier. Say again.
I said, don't read that. Any of it.
Yeah, there's some of his stuff that he uses the Bayesian theorem. But she presents a rather amazing case for the early Christians to make up these ideas of martyrdom. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's really, really great is that she presents this case that I think is true, that if you read Tacitus in the Annals, I think it's in 11 or it's in 14, talks about the Great Fire of Rome. Mm-hmm. And if you read that, it says that Nero basically festooned and I see Dan is in the Periscope chat as well. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
He festooned the guilt for the fire on those that were hated for who they were, the Christians, and had absolutely horrible things done to them, flogged them, fed them to wild dogs, rolled them up and used them, and they basically like tore their skin off and used it as stuff. Yeah, and according to Tacitus, they did these things, such horrible things that even those who were pagan began to feel sympathy.
Oh, wow.
And it sounds awful, and it also is when if you read the traditional literature. Now, tradition just means handed down.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean historical. An idea of the Joseph of Arimathea is a tradition. And there's no historical evidence he ever even existed. Is that's when Peter was crucified upside down.
Right.
And that's when Paul was beheaded. The issue with that is that the word Christian never appears in the Bible. And that it never actually became a word that was used by anybody until the late 1st century. 95, after the writing of the book of John. Some would say that the book of Acts was written after the end, after the end of the 1st century. And I tend to agree with Shaw on that one. And so what we know is that this person was writing about these things after the fact. And Suetonius, who also wrote about the Great Fire, never mentioned the Christians one time. Never mentioned that Nero did this. And it's not written by anybody else either. And I actually have where did I put this at? I forget exactly where I wrote it. It's in one of my Google Docs, I think, to where I went and I read this. And I was like, dude, I wrote it in response because somebody sent me that Jesus thing. Hey, here's this 7 criterion thing. And I was like, these are all wrong.
Oh,
right?
My God.
People don't die for a lie. And I'm like, okay, well, you can't show that to be true. But also, I don't think Paul was lying. Like, he thought...
They genuinely believed all of this stuff.
Yeah, he thought he had a vision.
Didn't think it was a lie.
And we don't know what happened to the other disciples, too.
Right.
But there is reason to believe that stuff never happened.
Right.
That these other stories of martyrdom weren't true. That Paul was simply murdered because of insurrection, basically. And we don't know what happened to Peter. We can't. He was illiterate. We don't know.
That's true.
And so...
I mean, I feel like all of them were, though.
Yeah.
That's true.
Paul, or Saul.
I have a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Saul of Tarsus, as far as we know from Tarsus, where we get that is the book of Acts.
Tarsus sounds like it's supposed to be a Ford vehicle. I was actually just talking about the Ford Tarsus today.
And this time it's inside of a turkey. But see, I'm reading this, and let me find it for you real quick. I can do this.
Boop, boop.
Yep. And I'm going to put a link for this in the chat. And send it to HarperCollins, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Get it in hardcover, if you would like it in hardcover. And it is, huh?
I said, ooh.
Yeah, hardcover right here. And we appreciate that you go and do that. You got another chat
Really
there.
So.
They wouldn't die but won't convert to Islam, right? Yeah, they wouldn't die for a lie, won't convert to Islam. And there's the link, by the way, to that book. I do recommend it. And it is amazing. It certainly is. And you can see that the words are, the typeface is kind of small. But
it's not like so small that it's daunting.
No, and it's not academic. Like,
that's good.
Like the one I'm going to show next week. I was reading that one earlier.
Yeah.
The forgeries one.
Yup.
So that's fun.
Yeah.
This one I get to this one. I'm about a quarter of the way through. Maybe I'm not good at this.
Yeah, thereabouts.
It's
about a quarter.
Well, I've also gone back and looked at some stuff too.
That's true.
See Martyrs of Lions.
Yeah.
LYONS, folks. I also have a long list of books that I recommend.
A very long list.
And so if you would like that list, send me a DM on Twitter.
It's a very long list.
Welcome back, Max.
Yeah. So moving on, we're going to have a little rant section every week. Now, what do we want it specifically to be? Do we want it to be stuff that is secular, like, related, like anything having to do with secular news and stuff like that? Or, and hear me out on this, can it be just whatever the fuck is bothering us?
I've got something that's just bothering me.
Yeah, same.
All right, you go ahead.
Okay.
You go first.
So, don't worry, it doesn't have to do with you.
That's good. I'd like
You're like, thanks.
No, I appreciate that if that's the case, you don't out me on
our
show.
if I had any issues, I would tell you, not on our show.
Appreciate that.
So, I work for a law firm. I think pretty much everybody knows that. So, a lot of times, the most difficult people to deal with are not necessarily clients, are not necessarily strictly coworkers. Sometimes they're the attorneys. I have one particular attorney that does not answer my emails, and the only way she answers my emails if she is at work very, very late for some reason, and decides she is going to answer every single email that I have sent her in the last fucking week. When there's some stuff that I've been following up on for 2 or 3 weeks, and then she just completely ignores that stuff. And I'm like, why? Why do you do this to me? Why can't you just answer your email as it comes in? It's going to be a lot easier for you that way.
Right.
Take a Saturday, go through your email, figure it out. It takes some time. I get that. I have a lot of email too. I get a lot of email every day. But you know what? I don't have like fucking 100 unread emails in my inbox. Because I read them. And I sort them out to where they're supposed to go. So I can find them. Answer your emails! I'm good.
Okay.
It was very petty. I realized that.
Mine is a bit different. So, some folks watching this, I think probably most people that watch this know that I was once a Christian. And not only was I a Christian, I was also a youth pastor. And that has something to do with how much I know about the Bible, obviously. And also I read the Bible almost every single day. I also have friends that are Christians, some really close friends, and some that I just happen to be acquaintances with. Some that I've known for a very long time, including some pastors who are amazing people. I do obviously know some Christians that are not great people. Robert Jeffress. I'm not going to say we know each other, but
No.
I know who he is, and I'm
We're
not a fan of
familiar.
his. He's very bigoted. And I also know some atheists that are not good people, that are bigoted, that are white supremacists, that are nationalists. And if they were religious, they would be Christian nationalists.
Yep.
So that's not to say that that every single person is a good person, because no matter where it comes from, that's not the case. However, it is a mistake to say that all Christians are indoctrinated. It's a mistake to say that Christians have some kind of mental disability. It's a mistake to say those that were pastors at one time were actually child abusers, that they were grooming young women, that they were lying to people on purpose, and that they were taking people's money. That is a mistake that skeptics need to stop making, and people need to understand that that's certainly not the case.
Yeah.
When you come to somebody like me, who's certainly on the far liberal left, and you tell me things like I've abused children simply by telling them that Jesus came in love and power and wanted somebody to go to heaven when I was younger, and I never once necessarily spoke of hell, because in reality, very specifically, Jesus did not either. You do not come to somebody like me and tell me that I abused children. You do not out me in that fashion. You do not do that to anybody. You don't say that every single pastor is a piece of shit. You don't do that. You don't say that every single Christian is deluded or mentally ill or is dumb. You don't say that, because it's simply not the case. In fact, there are an incredible number of very intelligent people who are religious in every single background. And in fact, there are people who don't know very much and who are incredibly ignorant that are atheists. All right? We do not take the stance. This stance that we are firmly imprinted into the ground and implanted there, then unwilling to move with ourselves and being so fucking pedantic and petty that we stand there and say, no, every Christian is column A. We do not get to say that. And every single time it happens, it should be called out for the bigotry that it is. And every single time it happens, we should remind the people that follow these people on social media and like and retweet and comment on their Facebook posts and go in on their Twitter and remind them that they say these things and remind them that they do these things. The people that we follow and interact with are a direct reflection of who we are. Mm-hmm. They absolutely are. And when if somebody that we respect shares something that, like we saw last night, that's transphobic, it doesn't matter. That is a person that would call out the bigotry. Yep. It happens. We need to do that. We cannot sit back and allow people to say that this person is awful because they are religious, or that this person is awful because they're not religious. Call out the religious bigotry at the exact same time. Absolutely do it. I do it on a regular basis when I see things that I believe are complete. I believe that teaching young Earth creationism is child abuse. I absolutely do. Misrepresenting science in such a way that you're damaging the hopes and dreams and the intellectual possibilities of the people who will take us into the future to combat climate change and to push all equity and equality forward, and to the people that are going to take us to the moon and beyond and keep it safer for everybody else, and damaging their intellectual possibilities is child abuse. Yes. And we should call that out. But to say that every single pastor is doing the exact same thing is wrong. And we should never do that.
I agree. I completely agree.
That was a fun time on Twitter.
Yeah. Good times. Twitter's not fun.
Yeah.
Oh well.
And we should look for conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, don't be afraid to have conversations, and feel free to have, like, disagreements and stuff. Like, that's just a basic part of life. Yeah. You're not going to agree with everyone on everything. There's stuff that we don't agree on.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, there's basic stuff that he and I don't agree on, and it's fine. It's not like the major major stuff, so we're good in that aspect. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah, our relationship is good enough that way.
Yeah. But, like, don't take it to such a point where not only are you taking it super personally, but you're also attacking other people based on stuff that is just ridiculous. Like, don't do that to people. Ad hominem attacks suck. Mm-hmm. If a person's argument sucks, their argument sucks. If a person's argument sucks, it doesn't mean they suck as a person.
Yeah.
You have no reason to attack somebody personally just because you might not like what they're saying. Recognize when to walk away and make sure that you, yeah, it was Twitter. Make sure that you are able to keep a cool head, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. I don't get into arguments on Twitter. I don't get into arguments on Facebook. I can't do it. I'm not good at debating. I'm just not doing it. Or I'm not good at it, rather. I'm not good at doing it. So that's a big reason why I don't do it. It's why my Facebook feed and my Twitter feed are mostly like cats.
It's true.
And dogs. So.
I'm fair at it.
You're really good at it. I think that's why you are able to get into the arguments with people that aren't like arguments. They're like actual discussions a lot of the time.
Yeah. I believe discussions. I believe that respectful, passionate discussion is the way forward.
Yeah.
I do think that I could take what I wrote and use it in a debate.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I need more details, but yeah, I could take all of that I wrote, and I could share it on Twitter, mm-hmm. right? And I would have evangelicals and apologists who would disagree with me.
Yeah.
And I understand that. and I would expect conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect conversation from Hunter Bailey and from Braxton. It's Braxton Hunter.
Yes.
It's Braxton Hunter Bailey.
Yes. And Hunter Bailey is the one that looks just like you in Ocean?
No, it's Braxton.
Braxton. Okay, sorry.
Yes, he's one of the... Apparently, if you're an atheist or a heathen or a pagan, you are bald with a beard. And we've been joking for a few months now. Thank you so much for this apologia that we're going to have a podcast. And thanks to Ocean for this, it's going to be called Bald Assertions. So it'd be a roundtable type of discussion of matters from a Christian point of view, from a pagan point of view, and from an atheistic point of view.
I like it.
And we've been joking about it. There are people who say we absolutely should do it at least one time.
I think it would be a better in-person thing than podcast-wise.
I agree.
I think it would be a really, really good, 25 to 30-minute video.
Yeah, I agree.
I would watch that. I would watch the shit out of that.
Then we got some pink hearts on Periscope for that.
Ooh.
And it's like Kala 3 also joined there for, I don't know if he or she, they left or not. See, that's one that I'm still getting around.
Adapting to. Yeah.
All right, what else? Yeah.
So we have, what channel have you been watching that you really like, that you really recommend? What is a channel that you've seen lately that you really like their content that you would tell everybody to watch?
I haven't watched anything new recently. Obviously we were on Neil's channel the other day.
Yeah, always recommend Neil. He's always a good time.
Yeah. I can recommend my friends.
Yeah.
I got Surus Skeptic, and I've got Ocean Keltoy. They both have YouTube channels, and then recommend Apologia.
Nerodia?
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah,
if you like Australian women.
I mean, who doesn't?
Honestly.
Let's be honest with ourselves. Who doesn't?
We've had conversations recently about why I'm never going to Australia. I've had those conversations on Periscope, by the way.
Yes, I know.
In the past.
I know.
And now I've had the conversations on Twitter
yes.
with people from Australia, and they're like, yeah, but I'm here. And I'm like, yeah, no, so are they. And apparently, because of the fires and everything, my favorite creature on the planet, Snark, because my favorite creature on the planet does live there, what is it? Is it /S or is it S/?
/S.
Sarcasm, favorite creature on the planet, is apparently because of the fires.
Oh, that one spider.
It's Sydney Funnelweb.
Yeah.
It's the deadliest spider on the fucking planet. There's the first F-bomb of the night.
No, it's not.
Really?
I've said it during news.
There you go. This is not for children.
NSFW.
Is now making its way, because now it's like, oh, well, now we can go into the towns because
they don't have any natural enemies because they've all been consumed by fire.
But it's there's so many of them.
Yeah. And
it's basically all their burrows and everything. It's perfect for them to come out and find other places to go. And so they're going to have more interactions with people, to which I said, not me.
No thanks. Don't really want to.
I'm
rather
never, ever, ever going to step foot in that continent.
I don't blame you.
I'm like, look, I climb volcanoes, okay? And we walk in the desert. And I did it last year in the middle of summer.
You did.
Okay? I'm not going to that island of death.
Mm-hmm.
It's like worse than Indonesia, and that's where the Komodo dragons are. I would rather take my chances on those islands in Indonesia than go to Australia where I can't see them.
That's
you know what I'm saying? Now, the Komodo dragon would still fucking murder me,
yeah.
But at least I'd know it was happening.
That's true.
I'm going to reach my hand underneath the table, and all of a sudden...
it's going to be gone.
Now I'm dead, because the Sydney Funnelweb just ate it. That's not how that works, but...
No,
that's,
not quite.
That, in my nightmares, that's exactly what it is. You can't tell me otherwise.
I get it.
That's my life right there.
I get it.
It's my brain.
I feel you.
And then I'm going to have, the brown, whatever it is, snake, and they have like 9 snakes that are like all on the dead scale, you know, like yeah, everything. Crocodiles. They have crocodiles in the middle of the fucking continent.
Jesus.
Yeah, the hell. And there's you know, we got the Black Widow, right?
Yeah.
They got the other one. It's a Lactrodectus. But it's got the thing on she's got her thing on the back and she's got an hourglass underneath, but she has extra up here. That means she has like extra venom. Yeah, she could kill you. That's on the scale. So many, and then you got the little tiny little thing, little crab thing or whatever, that's in the water. And here's the thing: you die within like 15 minutes, and sometimes you don't even know it bit you because it hits your foot underneath the water, and like the neurotoxin.
You think it's just a rock?
Yeah, you don't even feel it happen. And then I got like the blue-ringed octopus. If it bites you, bye-bye. Also, sharks in the water. Oh, look how great the barrier reef that we're destroying is. Oh, now I'm dead.
You're a little thalassophobic, aren't you?
What's that?
Like fear of open water and stuff like that?
No, I'm fine with that. I'm not okay with the
sharks.
Australia.
All of the things in the open water?
Just, yeah, see? Maya is correct. In fact, no, did you know? Okay, so this is we're like winding the show down, but I have to do this.
This has turned into an Australia rant.
This spider, this
funnel web, yeah.
No, the Black Widow plus some, right? They were indigenous to Australia. Mm-hmm. They are now in Indonesia, and they're now in New Zealand.
Oh, poor New Zealand.
And they're spreading.
Of course they are.
That means they're here. That means there's one waiting for me somewhere. It's as Maya said. You know, it's gonna be like the itsy bitsy spider came up and killed Nathaniel. That's what it's gonna be.
Yeah, you do have a very active imagination. You very much do.
It's in the bed right now. I know it, but not on your side. Nah.
No, it's not gonna bother going over to my side.
No, it already knows who it is.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And the males, little brown things, are completely harmless, because of course they are.
Well, yeah. They're pretty much expendable.
At least one half of the things, you know, that are harmless to humans, anyways. And they only live like 6 months. Then the females are like, much longer. You know, I'm like, hell. This is, so they say they've learned to fly. They by the way, if you don't know, spiders can like sail in the wind for a little while. They make
they can.
Like they do it them. God, they're amazing.
Spiders are awesome.
But
I'm just saying, they eat like mosquitoes and flies and stuff. They eat other bugs that you don't want around you.
Lizards too.
So let's have both of them.
And people. They
people eat.
I've seen 8-legged
bugs?
freaks. Okay.
People eat the bugs you don't want around?
No, well, yeah, some people do, but the spiders. I'm telling you, give a spider a chance. It's like a cat. It's gonna happen. Cats eat dead people all the time.
Only when they get really hungry.
Okay. You
so
die.
If you
don't feed them.
Well, yeah, you're not gonna feed them when you die.
Yeah, they're obligate
They have
carnivores.
to. Yeah, dogs do the same thing.
How dare you?
I dare.
Anyway. Spiders will do it while you're alive.
So channel recommendations.
Navardia is a good channel.
Yeah, Navardia is a great channel.
Navardia and
I really like Navardia.
Not Joe Witness.
Oh yeah, X-Cult Baby too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Not Joe is also.
X-Cult Baby.
I think Not Joe's in Australia. X-Cult Baby is awesome. Mm-hmm. There was another
Let's save
one.
some for next week.
Oh, there was one more that I was looking at. Hold on.
Well, we can save it for next week.
Okay. So
yeah, we'll save it for next week.
Neil, Navardia, Not Joe Witness, by the way, and
X-Cult Baby.
X-Cult Baby. You can find them all on the Twitters.
Do you have the music open?
Thought I did. Did I close it?
I think you did.
That happens.
Gotta go find it really quick before we
man. It's my
finish
downloads.
out. It is in your downloads. All right. Well, that is gonna do it for us this evening while Nathaniel is finding the finding the thingy thing.
The music?
Yeah, the music. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. I don't. I think it's called tape deck, so it might be in your T's.
John Wick.
That's not. No. I don't know.
The Righteous Gemstones.
So we'll be back next week, approximately 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, because daylight saving time doesn't start until March 8th, I think. If you would like to email us, you can email us at divinedisbelief@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are Divine Disbelief. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/divinedisbelief. We are apparently we're on Twitch now too. We're on Twitch, so that's always cool. So yeah,
hey, Twitch.
twitch.tv/divinedisbelief. That's really primarily going to be for the sake of streaming stuff. So if you happen to see this on Twitch, you should subscribe. That would be cool.
Tape deck.
Subscribe to us on YouTube. We're on YouTube. So we will see y'all next week.
Oh yeah, like, share, and subscribe, right? Oh, we gotta say that. We had to say
ring
that.
the bell, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
All
Follow
that
us
stuff.
on the Twitters.
I said that. Follow me on Motel Cowboy and follow him. He's Atheist Husker.
I am.
And Periscope too. Atheist Husker.
Yeah, I'm right now. So the 5 of you that are in there, Redemption.
Hi.
Redemption, you gotta go back and watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Go watch it on YouTube, man.
Yeah.
See you later, everybody.
Bye.